It's been a long time since I was able to enjoy myself at a party. It sure felt good. Now just one thing left to make this night even more perfect. I'm going to make my crush mine. There he is, Jad. OMG. Did he just glance at me? I could feel my heart flutter. As I immersed myself in a world with only Jad and me, the face of Harry the Metal Mouth suddenly popped up from nowhere. It's time for bed, mommy's little princess. What on earth was he saying? And why was everyone running toward the window like that? I jostled into the crowd and I peeked down. Oh, for heaven's sake! The beyond cringy woman standing there holding the speakerphone was none other than my mom! Janice, it's 10 p.m. You know it's your turn to stay with me tonight. I won't be able to sleep without you. God, is there any way for me to just evaporate right here, right now? This is too embarrassing. But wait, how did she know I was here? I immediately looked over at Christine. It must be her again. Everyone knew she had a huge crush on Jad too, and would do anything to get him. She's definitely the snitch. It's so frustrating. Anyway, let me fill you in on the situation. This crazy woman is my mom, who gave birth to not only me, but also my older sister Patty and my big brother Will. I guess we all turned out alright, but this wasn't down to Mom. She didn't raise us, our nanny Randy did. You see, Mom used to be an actress. She was always busy with her work and her numerous flings, which resulted in each of us three having a different father. Luckily, we had Randy to take care of us, so I never felt like I was missing out on anything. On the contrary, having to see Mom all day is a problem for me. A month ago, Mom suddenly decided to retire and move in with me and my siblings. And who knew that an out-of-date star could be such a childish, clingy nightmare? Ugh! She didn't like being alone, so she insisted Patty and I had to take turns sleeping next to her. Then she forced us to accompany her to the mall and be her luggage gophers and talk to her while she went for the zillionth beauty treatment of the week. One day, after an exhausting day out with Mom, we entered the house to Will rushing over and shouting, "Mom, why did you tamper with my laptop?" It turned out that Will had applied to the Juilliard Institute, one of the most famous art institutes in New York. But Mom went on his laptop and deleted the school's acceptance email, meaning poor Will had missed out on the response deadline. Oh, sweetheart, I didn't mean to. I was trying to send an email to report those scammers on TV, but I must have accidentally deleted your email. That's probably a good thing anyway, son. It would be better to apply for an economics major at the State University, so our family won't have to be apart. Do you know how hard it was to get in there? Ugh, I can't do this right now. I'm done. Dinner with Mom tonight was super awkward. It was just me and her, as Will was simmering in his room, and Patty, well, I don't know where she was. Afterward, I passed by her room and overheard a whimpering sound. I peeked through the gap in the door and saw Will also trying to calm Patty. James is now insisting on breaking up with me. If Mom hadn't come to my company and bragged that her daughter was the manager's girlfriend, the story wouldn't have reached my boss and neither of us would be in this mess. I know, right? Mom never cared about us before, but now she thinks she can just waltz back into our lives and do whatever she wants? I've had enough of this. We're both over 18 now. Let's just move out. Oh, no. No! Look at their determined eyes. I couldn't let this happen. What about me? Please don't go. I'm not 18 yet. Don't leave me alone with Mom. I beg you. Both of them gasped when they saw me. Then after a moment of silence, Will spoke up. Okay, we won't go. But at least we need to get things back to normal. I mean, back to just the three of us and Nanny Randy living in this house. And so, Will suggested we pull a bunch of pranks that would annoy Mom so much she'd end up leaving. But they were all busy with their studies and work, so they left it to me to carry out the pranks. Okay then, I'm ready. You can see how my mom was addicted to cola from the pile of empty cans over there. She often did midnight dashes to the convenience store when she ran out. So, my first plan was to make all the cola she's just bought disappear time after time. Frustrated much? However, she was strangely calm and acted like it's no big deal at all, and even bought a drinking helmet to make sure her Coke was always with her. Attempt failed. Move on to the second plan. Hide the Nintendo Switch. Why, you ask? Every night, Mom made us play on that thing with her, and honestly speaking, she was the worst player ever, but she wouldn't accept it, and kept making us play those boring games with her until she won. Now, no Switch, no troubles, right? Wrong! As having nothing to do, she came up with much more dumb things to ask us to do with her. From teaching her to cook, gardening, and even doing yoga with her. Having Mom around is like caring for a toddler. She needs constant care and attention. It's tiring. I can't bear it anymore. You clearly didn't carry out the tricks properly. You're making the situation even worse, don't you see? Looks like we'll have to get the job done ourselves. Oh yeah? Fine. You guys do better then. And so they carried on by using Mom's ultimate fear of spiders. She's terrified of them. Even the teeny tiny ones were enough to cause her to climb onto a chair in fright until one of us removed it. So, Patty asked me to buy fake spiders online. Then she hid them all over our house. But this time, without panicking, she even picked it up and tossed it in our direction, which freaked us out instead. So, Will decided it was his turn to take some action. He planned that one evening I would distract Randy, and in the meantime, Will would throw a feast at home, then swiftly drag all his friends out, leaving a huge mess for Mom. Despite never lifting a finger on cleaning, Mom is actually a clean person, so it would definitely drive her crazy. But nope, once again, it didn't go as planned when Will and Patty came home to find Randy there, helping Mom clean up the whole mess. Of course, I was the one who got the blame. Again. Janice, you told us you were able to get Randy away from the house for a day, didn't you? I did ask her to take me to Dad's, but midway there, she realized she forgot her phone and insisted on going back. Oh, stop with all the excuses. You're so useless and always do things by halves. The spider trick must have also failed because you bought some cheap ones that look too obviously fake. Yeah, perhaps you've been bought off by Mom, aren't you? Spill it. Ugh, are they seriously accusing me of betrayal right now? Enough! If you're that good, then do it all yourself. I stormed off without any extra words to them. The next morning, while watching Netflix, I heard Patty and Will arguing. It turned out Patty let her boyfriend use her car and he forgot to come pick her up to work. So she's trying to borrow Will's bike so she wouldn't be late for a meeting. But Will wouldn't let her because he had an important dance workshop to attend. Don't your dumb class just always repeat the same wriggle moves? Take the bus instead. You won't die if you're a little late. It's not my fault your gold-digging boyfriend forgot to pick you up in your own freaking car. You should have broken up with a jerk like him ages ago. They continued quarreling for a while until I saw Will launch his way down from upstairs shouting. Fine, just take it. Has anyone ever been able to stop you from anything, bossy Patty? And he headed straight outside to his bike, then came back after a bit, probably to get some air to calm down. Ugh, would these two give it a rest? How are we meant to figure out a way to win against Mom when they couldn't even go a day without bickering? Right then, Mom walked in and told me she was going to bake the cake Patty had shown her how to do yesterday. Oops, but I forgot to buy eggs. I wonder if Will needs to use the bike today. I'll borrow it just for a bit. Ha! Great! If Mom took the bike, then both of my annoying siblings would have to stop squabbling about it, right? Yes, Mom, take it. Will said he was gonna take the bus today. It'll be faster to cycle to the grocery store anyway. Then Mom hopped on the bike and shakily rode off. After a while, Will and Patty went out to the yard, and of course, the bike was no longer there. After I told them that Mom had already taken the bike, Will stopped dead. Because the truth was that he had purposely broken the brake so that Patty wouldn't take it. Patty tried calling Mom, but she didn't pick up. Then came a call from Randy. She told us that Mom had crashed the bike and had been hospitalized. Oh no. We rushed there immediately. And fortunately, apart from a ligament sprain, she's fine. It could have been much worse. But that meant she had to wear a bandage for a whole month to stabilize her leg. Ugh, this was all our fault. So now we had no choice but to whimper to Mom's every demand. Mom insisted I spoon-feed her all of her meals. When I mentioned that there was nothing wrong with her hands, she told me that the trauma to her leg had affected her entire body. She made Patty light loads of candles, play soothing melodies, and rearrange her bedroom furniture so she had a relaxing space to heal. And she got Will to download her old movies for her and feed her popcorn while she watched them on repeat. Of course, we were really worried about her and hoped she'd recover as soon as possible, but honestly, her ridiculous demands were going too far. Then, one day, she insisted we go to a picnic, as sitting inside all day was making her depressed. So, we did exactly just that. Then, while we were walking on a slope, I dropped my bag and bent down to pick it up. Oops, I forgot to lock the wheelchair's wheels. I gasped as I saw Mom whiz down the hill. But immediately, she hopped out of the chair and landed on her feet perfectly fine. Will and Patty stared in confusion at Mom's cascade-like performance. What about me? Nah, I'm not surprised at all, cause I was the one who set this whole thing up to expose Mom. Nanny Randy has told me everything. I know she has been helping you dodging our tricks, as well as carrying out that fake bike accident. Please, why do you have to make life so difficult for us? You never even cared about us, did you? As soon as I finished, Mom burst into tears. Then she began to pour her heart out. As it turned out, after her career finished, all the fortune, glory, friends, colleagues, and even men who once said that they'd love her for the rest of their lives, turned their backs on her. She was extremely lonely and needed us, her children, more than ever. Now, I only have 3 of you. In the past, I didn't fulfill my responsibilities as a mother, and I know I let you all down. But now I realize my mistakes. I only did what I did because I wanted to draw you back close to me. Please, forgive me. Give her a chance, kids. Although your mother's actions were somewhat misjudged, she only did them because she genuinely cares about you. Janice, she worried your partying was causing you to neglect your studies. Well, she didn't want your dancing dreams leading to showbiz nightmares like hers. And Patty, trust your mom, she was right this time. Turns out, Mom once caught James, the manager, aka Patty's boyfriend, secretly dating the receptionist. So she intentionally made a fuss at Patty's office to deter the third wheel. However, what came after didn't go as she expected and led to such a mess. But now, mission complete. We came here to catch Patty's cheating boyfriend red-handed. Or should I say, her ex-boyfriend. And of course, we made sure he paid for a worthy price for his actions. Justice has been served. Now, to relax. Patty and Mom are getting along much better now. They even look more like an endearing couple of sisters than mother and daughter. Will's taking Mom to one of his contemporary dance shows, so she can see how important it is to him. And me? I may be the youngest in the family, but while Will's away, it's my job to make sure Mom has someone to lean on. And I'm glad to take on this role. Maybe having my mom around isn't actually bad after all.
Hey, Kat here again. Are you ready for the next part of my story? If you haven't seen the first 2 parts, then what are you doing? Go and watch them right now. But if you have seen them, do you remember what happened to me? I'm a tomboy, a fact which my mom hates. Then her fiancé Max moved in with his girly daughter Taylor, and Mom clearly favored her over me. If this wasn't enough to deal with, I was then in an embarrassing situation at the mall while trying to be girly to impress this cute guy called Garrett who's into girly girls. So after the rescue of my best friend Harry and some help getting ready from my mom, I arranged to meet Garrett at the coffee shop so I could tell him exactly how I felt about him before his soccer team party. As I walked up the street to meet Garrett, I felt so happy. I'm sure it would be a surprise for him to see me dressed all girly, and he'd be into it. Then we'd kiss. Wow, that sounds great. I was the first one there, so I grabbed a hot chocolate and waited. Geez, that 5-minute wait felt like 5 years. Then he strolled through the door looking so casual but cute. He looked me up and down and then said, Kat, you do know the party later is just a casual hangout? I kept my cool as I replied, Oh, this old dress? It's just something I threw on in a hurry. He ordered a drink, and we talked for a bit. I knew it was the only chance, either now or never, so I just came out with it. Look, Garrett, I think you're cool. Really cool, in fact. I have a crush on you. No, I think I like you a lot. He looked a little flustered, but surely this was totally normal, as he was just digesting my words, right? After a few minutes of silence, he gave me an awkward look as he said, Kat, I think you're great, but you're not my type. I just see you as one of the boys. I'm not his type? And he just sees me as a boy? I sat there completely heartbroken. Each word he said felt like a sharp knife stabbing into my little heart. I immediately stood up and asked him, "What, you don't think I'm a girl? I'm in a dress, for goodness sake. If I'm not girly enough for you, then who is?" He seemed a bit confused by my question, then reluctantly replied, I'm into gentle girls who need me to protect. Like Taylor, for example. She's your sister, right? Could you help me and Taylor become a couple?" What? Not only did he have the cheek to publicly reject me, but now he was admitting to me that he liked that Barbie doll? I yelled at him. "You have to be kidding me. Out of all the girls in the world, you like Taylor?" Then I stormed out of there, relieved that I'd worn ballet pumps over evil high heels. I arrived home to the smell of freshly baked scones. Then I saw my mom and Taylor baking together in the kitchen. I wasn't in the mood for cooking with Barbie hour, so I slammed the door shut and stomped up to my room. My mom appeared and shouted up the stairs to me, "Hey, honey, how was your date? Why are you back so early?" Seriously, it was pretty clear from my door slamming that it hadn't gone well. Why did she feel the need to humiliate me in front of Taylor, of all people? Get real, Mom. I'm clearly upset. But then, what do you know? You only care about your shiny new daughter, Taylor. I ran into my room to change out of that damn dress I was wearing. Then I threw it down the stairs at her and yelled out, "It's your dress, so take it back, and play dress-ups with her instead." My mom looked hurt, and at first, I felt a little bad. But then she shouted back, "Why can't you just act like a normal girl and grow up? If you stopped being so selfish and made an effort with your appearance, your date might have gone better." Then Taylor continued, "Don't be too much for Mom. She means well. If that boy doesn't like you, then that's your issue, not hers." What the hell? How dare this nobody blame me? And why was she calling my mom Mom? I didn't call Max Dad. Ugh, she was the worst person in the world. I hated her. I wanted her to go back to Barbie Land and never come back. I stormed out of the house and took the bus to my dad's house. I tried to hold back my emotions so that I wouldn't burst into tears, but honestly, I had nothing. Garrett had brutally rejected me in favor of Taylor. I was still in a mood with Harry, and Mom had made it clear I was an embarrassment to her. The worst part was Harry had been right. I had lost myself. I was not myself anymore. I showed up at Dad's, and as soon as he opened the door, I burst into tears and hugged him. I told him everything and begged him to let me live with him. Dad tried to analyze everything for me. After a while, I calmed down and realized that, okay, maybe I was a bit sassy with Mom. Then Dad said, "Actually, Kat, there's something I wanted to tell you. I really still love your mom and want you to help me get back with her." Whoa! I wasn't expecting that, but I was totally down for helping him. Goodbye to Barbie Taylor and hello to a proper family. Dad allowed me to stay for the night to let the tension between Mom and me calm down. His apartment was on the small side, so I had to sleep on the couch. But I didn't mind, as it meant I could stay up watching movies all night without Mom moaning at me that I needed my beauty sleep. I arrived home the next day to Mom and Max cleaning the house together. They were laughing and joking around and, yeah, okay, they looked really happy together. But Dad deserved this happiness more, right? I greeted both of them, but only Max replied. My mother ignored me like I was invisible. She must have still been mad at me. So all this tension wasn't a part of my get Dad back with Mom plan. So before I left for school, I walked up to Mom, said sorry, then kissed her on the cheek. Cheesy, but worth it. Then, as I was rummaging through my locker at school, I felt someone pat me on the shoulder. I turned around to see that it was Harry. "Kat, I'm sorry," he said. I turned around and continued to look through my locker. I'd forgiven him already, but I wanted to make him sweat a bit first. "Come on, Kat. I won't be able to study if I know you're mad at me, and my grades will suffer." I laughed and said, "Take me out for ice cream after school, and I may consider forgiving you." "I think I can manage that." He smiled at me. After school, we went to the ice cream shop nearby. My mood was so good, and I told Harry all about my plan to get Dad back with Mom. He wasn't so sure about it, But regardless of this, he promised to have my back. So I had an ally, and the plan to heal my parents' feelings officially began. First, I invited Dad over for dinner. Mom wasn't overly impressed, but she couldn't say no. After all, he was my dad. During the meal, I went on about past stories, such as the time we all went on vacation together for my 7th birthday, and Dad lost his swimming trunks in the sea. My parents and Max just laughed, but I could make out the annoyed look on Taylor's face. After the meal, we watched TV together, and Taylor volunteered to make drinks for everyone. Then she brought out 5 glasses of orange juice. Dad took a large sip of his, then immediately spit it out all over his clothes and rushed to the toilet. Turns out she'd put mustard in my dad's glass, but neither Max nor Mom said anything about it. Damn little Taylor. Then one night, when I knew that Mom and Max were going on a private date, I deliberately hid Max's key. By the time they found them in the plant pot 2 hours later, they'd missed their time slot. Talk about success. Another day, my mom suggested going on a picnic, so I immediately called Harry and my dad and invited them to join. Then, while we were in the park waiting for Harry to show up, I saw Garrett walking over, hand in hand, with Taylor. Talk about awkward. Garrett couldn't even meet my eye, and I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. Mom asked them how long they'd been together. She said 2 weeks, so I did the math. OMG. That meant they got together on the day I confessed my feelings towards him. Whatever. I was so over Garrett. Although I have to admit, I was relieved when I saw Harry walking over with a basket full of my favorite foods. Taylor kept asking Garrett to feed her. Ew. It was so awkward. When Harry saw me staring at the couple with bullet-like eyes, he so quickly passed me a slice of chocolate cake. A while later, I asked Harry to help me take some photos. Then I quickly dragged Dad and Mom to take family pictures. I could see Dad was enjoying standing next to her, and I heard him tell her that she looked beautiful. Good one, Dad. Only Taylor wasn't having any of it. She immediately led Max over and pushed me out of the way so he could stand next to Mom. I stood next to Taylor, and before Harry counted to 3, I flipped Taylor's hair and deliberately stood over her. She glared at me. But I'm on top of the world, sucker! Anyway, I felt so good after that picnic, and I even thought that the day when Dad returned home would be soon. But a few days later during dinner, Mom and Max went on about what starters they wanted at their wedding. What? She still wanted to marry Max? So what about my dad? I immediately showed my annoyance, skipped my half-eaten meal, and stormed up to my room. I sat in my room, looked back at the picnic photos, and thought about my next plan. Then I heard a knock on the door. It was Max. "Kat, I have something important to tell you," he said with a sad voice. Uh-oh, this couldn't be good. Could it?
Hi, it's me again, Diane. In part 2 of my story, I started to work in my parents' company, but I didn't have the courage to tell them the truth that I was their long-lost daughter. Fortunately, one day, I found out that Brett, my boyfriend, wasn't my half-brother, and that his mom, Ashley, had been lying this whole time. But I didn't want to unveil the truth because I didn't want Brett to get hurt. That was until the day I bumped into Ashley. In the store, I watched as she looked at the photo of me and my mom and aunt from when I was just a baby, and the look of recognition on her face as she realized my aunt was the kidnapper she hired nearly 20 years ago. She looked at me terrified. Are you that baby? Are you also the one I saw in the company earlier this afternoon? What are you doing with Brett and his dad there? Did you know everything? She shot questions at me and didn't even wait for my response. Instead, she just started yelling at me, claiming that I was plotting to get revenge on her for stealing my life away from me. I knew it was pointless trying to explain to her, so I said nothing and watched as she ran out of the store without buying anything. The next day when I got to the company, I found out that Brett had suddenly disappeared. He hadn't come to work, and no one could get in touch with him. My dad told me that he'd gone to see his mom the night before, and after that, he hadn't come home. Oh my God, his mom! After he'd bumped into me, had she done something bad to him? I couldn't bear it. My aunt had given me Ashley's address, so I went there to find out what was going on. As soon as she opened the door, I asked her where Brett was, and she just smirked at me and said she told him I was his half-sister and that I was preparing to kick him out of my dad's family. So she said he must have run away because he was so disgusted by me. I felt so angry I wanted to scream. Ashley was ruining everything. She even said to me, "You can't fool me. It's no coincidence that you're working in your dad's company and that you've seduced Brett. You're doing all of this on purpose." Well, that just made me even angrier. I said to her, "I know Brett isn't my dad's son. I did a DNA test, and you're lucky I haven't said anything to either of them, but I will now. You better prepare yourself for the consequences." Then I left, leaving her standing there looking angry. I went straight to my parents' house to tell them before Ashley could beat me there to tell them lies. They let me in straight away and asked me what was going on and if it was about Brett. I nodded and took out all the evidence I'd prepared. This was the moment of truth. I was so nervous. I gave them the DNA results of Brett and my dad, then the baby photo of me, and then a letter my aunt had written confessing about how Ashley had hired her to kidnap me. My parents were shocked, of course, and had a lot of questions, but soon it all became clear and we all started crying. It was just so overwhelming. I even told them about what Ashley had told Brett the night before and begged them to believe me that I didn't do it all on purpose. Of course they said they believed me, and I was relieved. But the very next day, you won't believe what Ashley told them. My parents went straight to Ashley's the next day to confront her, and she couldn't deny it because there was so much evidence. But then she told my parents that she had been feeling so guilty, so she was the one who'd gotten in touch with my aunt and encouraged her to tell me the truth and then help me find my parents. After my parents told me this, I told them Ashley was lying. She was trying to make herself look like an angel when she was none other than the devil. I suggested to my parents we sue her or something, and then a few days later Ashley got in touch with me. She'd found out where I lived, and as soon as I let her in, she begged me not to sue her. She'd obviously already received a warning letter from my parents' lawyer. She said she had a family to care for and didn't want them to know about her past. Then she promised me she'd never come near me or my family again. I was sick of her now and asked her to leave. But then she apologized again, and she really regretted everything she told Brett and that she'd gone to see him. "What? Where did you find him?" I asked. And she told me that she found him at her parents' house, where she and Brett had lived when he was little before she'd gotten married. Oh, that's right. I knew Brett loved his grandparents so much and often visited them. I hadn't even thought that that was where he could be. Then she told me that Brett hadn't disappeared because he was disgusted by me. It was because he felt so guilty about everything that had happened. She told me she'd already gone to see him and confessed because she wanted to at least be seen as an honest mother in her son's eyes. After I told Brett that he isn't your dad's son, he got so angry and shouted at me that he hated me and never wanted to see me again. It crushed me. Ashley told me and started to cry. "Please forgive me, Diane," she continued. "I've lost Brett. Surely that's punishment enough for everything I've done. I thought that what I did would help Brett so he could grow up in a wealthy family. But turns out all I did was hurt the people around me, especially Brett." Can you guess what I did next? I went to meet my parents and asked them to remove all accusations against Ashley. You're probably wondering why I changed my tune so quickly. Well, I felt like enough revenge had already happened, and I couldn't bear anyone suffering anymore. All I'd ever wanted was to have a peaceful life, and revenge only satisfies us for a second. It doesn't make us happy in the long term. After that, Ashley came to apologize to my parents, and swore she'd completely disappear from our life after that. Then she gave us Brett's grandparents' address and asked us not to put any blame on Brett. Then she left. Poor Brett. When I went to meet him, it was clear he was the one who'd been hurt most by all of this. His grandparents told me that after Ashley had revealed the truth to him, he'd lock himself up in his room and hadn't come out. I knocked on his door and begged him to let me in. After a while, he opened the door, and I couldn't believe how he looked. He'd become so skinny and his eyes were so sad. It made me so upset to see him like this. He said to me that he blamed himself for everything, for the big lie my life had been, for my parents' loss of their only child, and for the way we'd broken up. He truly believed all of this was because of him and his mom. I hugged him and told him none of this was his fault, and I asked him to come back to my parents' house because we all missed him so much. He eventually agreed, but I could see he was nervous, especially when both my parents knew that Brett wasn't related to them by blood. But my parents welcomed him back into the house. However, I could see they were feeling a bit awkward about what to say, so I stood up and said to them, "Even though you guys aren't actually related, you've still been so happy together. Just like my adoptive mom, she ended up getting a daughter she might never have had, and you got a son that brought you so much joy. Sure, there were lots of lies, but we were still happy, right?" Believe it or not, everything worked out after that. Brett and I went back to school, and we've both decided to go work at my parents' company after graduation. I have chosen to move in with my parents, but of course, I still visit my adoptive mom and aunt all the time. My adoptive mom understands that this is important for me, so that I can get to know my parents properly and catch up on lost time. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. I asked my parents to forgive my adoptive mom and aunt, because even though they acted wrongly in the past, they still raised me and did such an amazing job. As for Brett, he moved out into his own place, but still visits my parents all the time. However, Brett and I are no longer dating. It wasn't because of my parents, though. Let's be honest, it would just be too weird if we kept dating after everything we'd been through. It was a hard decision for us both, but it's for the best. We both need to move on so that we can have a better future. And hey, at least we can still be friends, and soon, colleagues too.
Hey, it's me, Kat. I'm back to fill you in on the next part of my drama-filled life. So, me and my mom have never got on that well. She hates my tomboy ways and wishes I was a girl. So when her new fiancé Max moved in with his Barbie doll daughter Taylor, well, my mom instantly loved her more than me. During an argument, she even told me that she couldn't love someone like me and that I should grow up. How could my mom say that to my face? And especially in front of that little brat Taylor. I was so angry that I shut myself in my room that night and skipped dinner. But then, around 3 a.m., my stomach wouldn't quit growling, so I snuck down to the kitchen, and surprise, surprise, there was no leftover food for me at all. Great. Clearly, they didn't view me as a part of this family anymore, and wanted me to starve to death. I couldn't fall back asleep after that. So as soon as the sun came up, I called my best friend Harry up early. He answered the phone half asleep. What? I told him to rise and shine, as I needed saving from my nightmare of a home life. Oh, and I also told him to bring food. He muttered out "Yeah, fine." At least leaving early meant I wouldn't have to face Mom and Taylor. As soon as I got into Harry's car, he threw me a sandwich and asked what was wrong. And I told him how Taylor's basically Nightmare Barbie. He grinned at me. "Yeah? What'd she do? Steal all your food?" Trust him to make a joke out of my distress. Anyways, I told him everything that had happened while munching on the sandwich. He replied, "Come on, Kat. Like you're gonna let some 16-year-old get the better of you? How about I come over after school and suss out the situation? I'll fight off this kid for you." I jokingly replied, "Okay. I guess that might help keep the peace, as for some reason my mom seems to like you." So Harry came around, and naturally, my mom was all over him, telling him how handsome he is and demanding he stay for dinner. Talk about cringe! Then I had to listen to Mom telling him how she didn't understand me and how he should talk some sense into me. Hello? I was still in the room. Then Taylor arrived home all shiny-haired and girly. I swear my mom's face lit up just by seeing her. And worse still, so did Harry's. Ugh! Oh, Harry, have you met Taylor? Kat's sister. She goes to the same school as you guys. Hi, Taylor. I've definitely seen you around, but I didn't know you were Kat's sister. She wouldn't tell me. He elbowed me while being all smiley to her. In that whiny voice of hers, Taylor replied, "Nice to meet you, Harry. Are you Kat's boyfriend?" We all burst out laughing. Then my mom chimed in, "Honey, I wish, but no. Your sister seems to be allergic to love. But you two would make a lovely couple." What on earth? They both laughed, and Harry replied, I'd love to, but such a pretty girl like Taylor wouldn't lay an eye on me. Great. Thanks, Harry. As if Taylor isn't big-headed enough. I slyly kicked Harry's leg and gave him a dirty look. After dinner, me and Harry went to play video games in my room. As soon as I closed the door, he told me that Taylor seemed all right. Was he blinded by her Barbie looks or something? I was so mad that I slammed down my game's controller and told him he sucked. Ugh! Why did everyone treat me like such a joke? So, what if I didn't dress up girly? I still had feelings. They knew nothing about me. I actually had a huge crush on this boy at school called Garrett. He was on the boys' soccer team, and he was so talented. I totally swooned out loud when he scored 3 goals in a row. I usually didn't like jocks. As a member of the girls' soccer team, our teams often trained together, and I had to put up with them showing off to impress girls, while in reality, they couldn't actually play, and they skipped practice all the time to go partying. Garrett was different. He totally shined amongst those useless guys. I took the initiative to talk to him. Turns out, Garrett and I had loads in common. We instantly clicked and talked non-stop about soccer, skateboarding, and other stuff. Okay, so there was one problem. He seemed to be interested in the cheerleader type of girl. Once he even admitted his celebrity crush was Selena Gomez. Yeah, I know. She's as girly as you can get. That got me thinking a lot. I definitely wouldn't change who I was, but maybe a little makeover wouldn't hurt, right? I told Harry about it, and he just told me it was stupid, and he wasn't really supportive, which was strange for him, but whatever. So Harry worked evenings and weekends at the burger joint in the mall. I knew it was just so he could check out the girls going into the clothes shop opposite. I knew if I was going to win Garrett's heart, then I'd need to change my style, so I started visiting Harry more often at work. I'd sit there munching on free fries while watching the girly girls shop, so I could get the gist of the in-trends and stuff. Then I stole my mom's lip gloss and some glittery eyeshadow and put it on for school. I even started wearing this plaid purple skirt Mom bought for me. I mean, at least it was sort of edgy, right? Though I had nothing other than my collection of oversized tees to go with it, but whatever. It was girly enough. OMG. Wearing a skirt is hard work. I couldn't run as fast or jump up to grab something off the top shelf. I also kept on forgetting I was wearing a skirt and sitting with my legs apart. Oops. My plan was working, though, as Garrett started sitting with me and Harry at lunch. Oh, and one time when I was struggling to run in a skirt, he passed me his jacket to tie around my waist. It gets even better. He invited me to his soccer team party. OMG! Talk about hitting the jackpot. This meant he liked me, right? That was it. I decided that the party will be my grand finale. I'd get a total makeover and confess my feelings to him while there. Finally, the day of the party arrived, so I put my awesome plan into action. Okay, so Mom's lousy makeup just wasn't cutting it, so I went into the drugstore and used up the testers. I even packed a pair of Mom's high heels with me. Now all I needed was a dress. Obviously, I wasn't going to buy one for keeps. No, I'd wear them for the party and return it the next day. All of my spying taught me one thing. Floral print was the in thing right now. So I bought this flowy floral dress in my size and went to the mall restrooms to try it on, so I had more privacy. I put the high heels on and zipped up the dress, but it seemed a little tight. Jeez, talk about tiring. I could barely reach the zipper on my back. After, 5 minutes of struggling, I was impatient and used up all of my force to pull it up. Done. Finally! But, uh-oh, my hair was stuck in between the zipper! Ugh, stupid long hair. I began to panic. I was completely stuck. Harry was on shift in the burger joint, so I sent him an emergency message. He sent me 5 crying with laughter emojis back, but he also said he'd be straight over. I couldn't expect him to come into the girls' restrooms, so I had to try and walk out into the mall foyer. My hair was stuck, so I had my face up to the sky, and every step was shaky due to the high heels. My 2 arms went straight out to navigate since I couldn't properly see the way. I must have looked like a zombie. People were whispering and laughing. It flustered me, and I tripped. The laughters were even louder now, and I couldn't even get up. I laid there in a weird position, feeling so helpless as anger and embarrassment filled me up. Thank God I heard a familiar voice. "Kat, are you okay?" Harry to the rescue. Finally! He shooed everyone away, took the heels off my feet, and helped me get up. Then he said, "Oh my God, Kat, what have you done? Seriously, why are you making a fool of yourself just because of some jock? You've lost yourself, Kat." He kept on grumbling as he tried to fix the zipper. Great, as if I wasn't already miserable enough. He was treating me just like my mom did. I was so angry, I pushed him out of my way as soon as he was done with the zipper, then stomped off. I was so mad. I washed all of the makeup off my face, changed back to my normal clothes, and went home. No more party or whatever. I was done. As soon as I reached home, I ran straight to my room and saw a brand new dress on my bed. What? I never wanted to see one of those evil things again. I grabbed the dress and stormed downstairs and started screaming at Mom. "I won't wear this. I hate it. I will never be like Little Miss Perfect Taylor, so please stop." I expected Mom to yell back, but to my surprise, she didn't. She told me that Harry had messaged her telling her what had happened. Oh my God, Harry, you snitch! I pulled out my phone and was about to dial the number to yell at him. Mom stopped me and continued. "He's worried about you, honey, so he asked me to help you out. I saw this dress in a shop the other day and bought it for you to wear to my wedding, but I think today is a special occasion too. Put it on, and go tell that boy you like him." Mom hugged me. Wow, talk about an emotional roller coaster. I was so touched and embarrassed about my thoughts and actions, so I agreed to let Mom help me curl my hair and apply my makeup, and I wore the dress she bought. I actually looked pretty cute, not gonna lie. She looked so happy and wished me good luck as I walked out of the house in ballet pumps, not high heels. Those things are evil. The party wasn't till later, so I texted Garrett and told him to meet me at the coffee shop around the corner. Everything was set. There's only one last step left.
Bella here with the next part of my story. As difficult as it was having to work alongside my cheating ex Ed, I felt like I was dealing with it, and it helped loads that I had Jim and John around to cheer me up. Only, Jim was about to go away on a month-long work trip, and the thought of being left behind without him to support me was kinda scary. So, the three of us went out for a goodbye dinner. Then, when he dropped me off, he came out with the bombshell that he loved me. What? This was crazy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, could I have misheard him? Staring at him in shock, I muttered out, What? Okay, so perhaps this wasn't the best way to respond, but I was in complete shock. He held my hand and said,
"Bella, I've liked you since the first day I met you, but you were Ed's girlfriend, so I had to keep my distance. That's why I seemed cold towards you."
Jim, I tried to say something, but he cut me off.
"Please, wait. I need to get this off my chest. Every time I took care of you, it wasn't because Ed asked me to. It's because I wanted to. I wanted to tell you everything when we overheard the conversation between Ed and Ellie, but I got cold feet. I was worried that you weren't over Ed yet, and that you still needed time to heal."
"Oh, Jim, I didn't know," I said. He continued.
"And, I was also afraid that you would reject me, and then you would feel awkward around me. But I don't think I could bear a whole month of keeping my feelings a secret. And, at least, this way, if you don't feel the same way, then I have a month overseas to get over you, right?"
He joked. Talk about surprising. I did not see this coming at all. I always knew Jim was there for me when I needed him, and he always knew when something was bothering me. It's only now I realized he was protecting me not as a big brother, but as a man who had feelings for me. Thinking about it, I was so preoccupied with Ed that I didn't see that Jim's affections towards me were growing. It felt nice to know that an amazing man like Jim liked me, especially after the trauma my heart had received from Ed. But that was the main problem. I still wasn't fully over Ed. So I replied, I'm really flattered for what you've been doing for me all this time. I don't know how to thank you. But this is so sudden. I don't know what else to do. My heart is pounding so fast right now. I don't even know why I... He smiled at me and gently stroked my hair.
Silly. I'm not asking you to give me an answer right now. Just think about it. You have a whole month without me ahead. Maybe then you'll figure it out.
He winked, then walked off. I could only manage to yell after him, "Safe flight, Jim! I'll wait for you!" He simply replied,
Good night, Bella.
I watched him drive away, then I went inside and threw myself on the bed. I tried processing everything that had just happened. Talk about information overload! I couldn't deal with this right now, and forced myself to sleep. I had to get up early tomorrow and take the bus to my hometown, as it was my granny's 90th party and my entire family would be there. When I arrived at my parents' house, everybody was already there. My mom and dad, my uncles and aunts, my lovely granny, my cousins, basically everyone. It felt so good to see them all. It turns out, being around my kind, loving, and supportive family was just what I needed right now. Yep, it definitely felt good to be home. I noticed that my father didn't look so great. He'd lost a lot of weight and kept on coughing. I asked him if he'd gone to the doctor about it, but he said it was just a cold and nothing to worry about. Granny's birthday was lovely and sweet. We decorated the house with balloons, bought her a delicious cake, and there was even a huge poster of George Clooney, as he's my granny's favorite actor. After lots of cake, I wheeled Granny out onto the front porch, and we had a catch-up. She said to me, "How's my little Bella? You look so skinny. You need to eat more. And when will you introduce me to that boyfriend of yours? You know, I'm not that young anymore, so hurry up." I know, I laughed. Granny continued, "Didn't you want to bring him last year? What's his name again? Ed." I just smiled and said nothing. But the strange thing was, when Granny mentioned Ed, all I could think about was Jim. I guess this meant I kinda missed him. Granny noticed my sad face, so she asked what was bothering me. But I told her it was nothing. I was just tired because of the long ride. But then she said something to me that made me think. "You know, sweetie, I've lived for a long time, and I've learned that there are only a few good people left out there. So when you find the right person, you've got to fight for them. It might not feel like the right time, but ask yourself this. When is? Don't let the past ruin your future." She smiled and kissed my hand. Oh gosh, Granny, that was so deep. Hearing her saying that made me seriously think about my feelings for Jim. He was truly a good man, but I was so obsessed with all the bad things Ed had done to me that I'd been oblivious to Jim's feelings towards me, and my feelings towards him. Oh my God. I was in love with Jim. I'm so stupid. Now I knew what I needed to do. Thanks, Granny. I love you to the moon and back. I kissed her on the forehead and pushed her back inside the house. I went upstairs to get my laptop and to send my resignation email, which I've been keeping in my drafts for these past few months, and I sent it to Ed. Yes, that's correct. I finally did it. I quit my job. I wanted to end the dramas in Starcross Estate and begin a new chapter in my life with Jim. Now, I could stay home with my family for a week or so, as I'd already quit my job, so it's not like they could fire me or anything. This would be my healing time. Then I took my phone out and sent Jim a message saying, "When you're back in town, can we please meet up? We need to finish that conversation we had last time. I can't wait to see you again." Smiley face. Jim instantly replied back, "Me too." Smiley face. But then, something happened that turned my whole world upside down. My mom screamed out that something was wrong with Dad, so I rushed over to them and saw that he was on the floor, unconscious. We took him to the hospital, and they carried out loads of tests and x-rays on him. Then the doctor told us the results. My father has a disease called heart arrhythmia. An arrhythmia describes an irregular heartbeat. With this condition, a person's heart may beat too quickly, too slowly, too early, or with an irregular rhythm. In his case, his heart beat too slowly. It was a genetic disease that my grandpa had also had. My father needed surgery to implant a device, called a pacemaker, into his chest. This is a small device that uses electrical pulses to prompt the heart to beat at a regular minimum rate. You wouldn't believe how much it all cost, and his health insurance wouldn't cover it. So the main problem was money. We needed lots of it, and quickly. If my father didn't have this operation soon, he could have a stroke or heart failure. So over the past days, we asked everybody we knew. Each friend and acquaintance lent us some money, but it still wasn't enough. It wasn't even a quarter of the amount we needed. We also tried to get a loan from the bank, but the procedure would take at least a month, which was too long. Time was running out, and it felt like there was nothing I could do to stop it. It was horrible. Ever since the day I sent my resignation email, Ed called a few times, but I really wasn't in the mood to answer his calls. I was so worried about my dad, and let's face it, Ed was the last person I wanted to deal with. But then some days later, I got a text from him saying that he'd tried calling me to find out why I'd quit, but I never picked up. So he called my cousin, and she'd told him about my father's condition. Then something crazy happened. Ed offered to pay all of my dad's medical bills. But there was a catch. He rang me up to explain what he wanted. And whoa, you won't believe what he was asking me to do. It's Bella, and I'm back with the final part of my story. Last time, I found out the shocking truth about Ed. Turns out, he never loved me. No, instead, he was in love with his half-sister, Ellie, who isn't actually his biological sister at all. It was so much information to process already. But to make it even worse, Ed's mom messaged him insisting all three of us go to her house right away. As soon as I entered Stafford's lavish home, I felt so nervous. Ed spoke out.
Mom, Dad, what's wrong?
Mrs. Stafford gave him a stern look and replied,
You need to explain this right now.
Then she showed the same picture of Ed and Ellie that John had sent me. Before anyone had a chance to reply, she looked at me.
You're Ed's girlfriend? Did you know about this?
I was confused, then said, I only found out today. She was furious and yelled at Ed and Ellie.
What is this? You two are crazy? How could you do such incestuous things?
She didn't let Ed and Ellie explain, then continued.
Did it cross your minds what would happen if other people saw this picture? I'm so ashamed of both of you.
Ed stood up and replied,
But, Mom, we don't share the same bloodline. Why can't I love Ellie?
His mom looked so confused. So Ellie looked at her with tear-filled eyes and said, It's true. Dad's, well, he's not my biological dad. It was my mom's idea. She just wanted me to have a secure future. I never wanted to deceive anyone, and I honestly do care about you all, and I'm so sorry.
Mrs. Stafford shouted. What did you say? You aren't my husband's biological child? You don't have any blood relationships with us whatsoever? In that case, why do you dare live here in our house? And now you're using my son so you can get your hands on his fortunes? Ed replied, Mom, don't say that. Ellie is not that kind of girl. I love her, and I know she loves me too.
Mr. Stafford, who'd been sitting there silently, suddenly spoke up.
I know. I've always known. I took a DNA test years ago, but I decided to keep this secret and continue to raise Ellie because I love her as my own.
He looked at her.
You've always been my little docile daughter, and I'm always proud of you, Ellie.
Ellie burst into tears. Ed hugged her and comforted her.
Mrs. Stafford was so angry, and she said, You all knew the truth, but chose to leave me in the dark. I demand she leaves this house right now, else I will. Then she stormed out of the room.
The atmosphere was frosty, and I seriously wanted to get out of there. Mr. Stafford apologized to me for being dragged into all this drama. I felt super awkward, so I made out that it was getting late and left. This whole thing was such a mess, but I had my own issues to deal with. Their problems weren't anything to do with me anymore. I was finally free of Ed once and for all, and it was such a relief. A week passed, and even though I'd sent Jim dozens of messages, he hadn't replied to any of them. I was pretty sure he'd changed his number. This sucked, so I decided to meet John to explain myself to him and to see if he had Jim's contact details. I met him in a bar, and after a few drinks, I asked him, "You sent the mail to Mr. and Mrs. Stafford, right? Why did you do it?" John smiled and replied, "Because I hated Ed. He stole my Ellie and also made Jim misunderstand you. What a jerk." I replied, "For what it's worth, I really do think Ed and Ellie love each other. Besides, Ellie isn't right for you. You'll find someone amazing, John. You just wait." After that, I told John everything that had happened and admitted my love for Jim. To my surprise, John smiled and told me that he already knew everything, as one time, when he was going to surprise Ellie with a cake, he overheard Ed telling her how he was paying for my dad's medical bills in exchange for me pretending to be his girlfriend. Then he hugged Ellie and kissed her on the top of the head. After that, John had doubts about their relationship, so he followed them and took some pictures. After discovering the truth, John met Jim to tell him everything, but Jim just looked sad. Then John said, "I've thought about this a lot, and I think the real reason Jim was so disappointed was because when you ran into difficulties, you went to Ed for help instead of him." It hadn't even crossed my mind how bad it must have looked. All I could think about was my dad and how I needed to help him, which is why I jumped on Ed's offer of financial help. In hindsight, I should have discussed it with Jim first. I told John how much I missed Jim and wanted to see him. He said he'd try to help, but he didn't know where Jim was either, and that knowing his brother, he probably just needed some time to process everything. A whole month passed by, and I hadn't heard a word from Jim. Every morning when I saw John at work, I hoped today would be the day he had good news for me, but it never happened. Jim definitely seemed to be a man who didn't want to be found. At least, not by me. I missed him like crazy and just wanted to hug him tight so that he couldn't disappear. Everyone in the company now knew the truth about Ed and Ellie. At first, they were shocked and talked about nothing else. But now, no one seemed that bothered. For me, I wasn't angry with them anymore. Life was too short for that. Anyway, Ed insisted on still paying my dad's medical bills, which I was very thankful for. One day, Ed and Ellie suddenly texted that they wanted to meet me. I was kind of curious, so I met them at a cafe near our company. I walked in to see both of them looked so happy together. It seemed like things got better for them. "Am I interrupting this lovely moment?" I joked and sat down next to Ellie. She blushed, and I'd never seen her so happy before. Ed told me that his parents seemed to accept their relationship. Even Mrs. Stafford was beginning to mellow down, and she hadn't kicked Ellie out. Then Ellie said, "We wanted to make amends for everything we put you through, so we found Jim for you." Then she pulled out an envelope from her bag and said it was Jim's address and a letter of recommendation if I wanted to apply to the company where Jim was working. Was it real? I couldn't believe it. Finally, I'd found him! There was no more time to waste, so I packed my bag and hopped on a plane. Even though it was dark when I landed, I went straight to the address Ellie had given me. When I was walking in the courtyard of the building with my suitcase, then suddenly, I saw someone. OMG. It was Jim! I couldn't believe it. I dropped the suitcase and ran to hug him. At first, Jim looked shocked and tried to push me away, but then he hugged me back. Jim drove me to a riverside near his apartment. We sat silently, drank beer, and looked at the lights sparkling from the buildings. I asked him, "This place is great, huh? Do you come here a lot?" He stayed silent for a while, and then replied, "One time,
I found it when I was jogging. Sitting here with some cans of beer is awesome, so I often come here when I feel tired and miss you.
What he said had crushed my heart. I turned to look at him. He'd lost some weight and looked sad. I told him the truth about what had happened and said, "I'm so sorry." At that time, all I could think about was saving my dad. So when Ed called me and said he would help me, I didn't think twice. And I also thought that the deal would end soon, and I just wanted to hide it all. It's all my fault for not thinking about your feelings, but you also left me without saying anything. Even your own brother doesn't know where you are. Jim spoke out.
I didn't tell John, as I knew he'd tell you, and I needed to be alone. When you ran into difficulties, you didn't need me. You just...
Without letting him finish his sentence, I cried out, "You didn't even give me a chance to explain! You just left me! I miss you like crazy!" Jim rushed to hug me, wiped my tears, and comforted me.
I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have left like that. I really miss you too.
We kissed, and I still wondered if this was just a dream. Finally, I'd found him, and I definitely wasn't losing him again. When we finished kissing, I looked up and saw a shooting star. OMG, it was such an amazing end to the perfect day, and I took it as a sign that we were meant to be together forever. That was it. After that, I got a job at the company where Jim was working, and officially moved into his apartment. Oh, and we're getting married next month, and I can't wait. If in doubt, then you should follow the wise words my granny once told me. There are only a few good people left out there. So when you find the right person, you've got to fight for them. It might not feel like the right time, but ask yourself this: when is? Don't let the past ruin your future. So basically, you should always follow your heart and not let what's meant to be pass you by. Hey, it's me, Erin again. I'm here to tell you the concluding part of my story. So I came up with a genius idea to swap boyfriends with my bestie, Jace, and mess things up to make our current boyfriends appreciate us more. Only my plan backfired massively when my boyfriend Zach decided he loved Jace, not me. Standing on Zach's doorstep having him tell me he didn't love me anymore was so humiliating, especially as a bunch of college kids were hanging out nearby and could hear everything. I yelled at him. "We've been together for 3 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" He replied,
I know, and we've had some great times together, but we've grown apart. Besides, I know Jace loves me too.
"Geez, Zach, she doesn't. It was all part of the plan."
Nah, before all that, she told me she was tired of Jay, and she really loves me, but she couldn't do that to you, or to Jay.
What? Unbelievable! I made this plan work for her, but all along, she'd been playing me and my boyfriend. She'd ruined my relationship behind my back and been fake to me all this time? Now she was playing happily ever after with Jay while my boyfriend was pining after her. I stormed out of there, but going home was the last place I wanted to be, so I ended up at the park. I sat there thinking things through. I couldn't just leave things like this. Both Zach and Jay needed to know about Jace's true face. Fueled by my anger and humiliation, I rushed off to find Jay. Then I told him everything. He looked completely shocked as I told him how the plan backfired, as now Jace has feelings for Zach and was just using him. I expected him to get upset or something, but instead, he just looked angry and shouted at me.
Erin, you're such a bad friend. I've always loved Jace, and I know she loves me too. Stop trying to wreck other people's happiness because your own love life sucks.
I stood there speechless, then watched as he walked off. OMG. That did not go as expected. Is that all people thought of me? That I was some bitter, jealous jerk? All I tried to do was save Jace and Jay's relationship, and it worked, didn't it? But now, I didn't know what was going on anymore. Sighing, I realized that I was wrong to confront Jay without talking to Jace first. For all I knew, Zach could have been lying. I mean, the guy was completely delusional. It just hurt so much that he didn't love me anymore. Instead, he loved my best friend. As much as this sucked, I knew I was wrong to blame Jace for this before hearing her out. Maybe Jay was right. I was a bad friend. I wanted to find Jace, but Jay must have got to her first, as she was never in our room anymore. Then a friend of ours told me Jace had moved back home. OMG, she'd moved out and not even told me. I tried catching up with her after classes, but she avoided me at all costs. Ugh, this sucked. I'd had enough of this. So one day, I stopped her at the classroom door and said, "We need to talk." She tried to walk away, so I grabbed her arm. But she replied, "There's nothing to talk about." How could she act so flippant when she had everything and I was left with nothing? So I shouted at her, "Excuse me, you ruined our plan? Now you have everything. You have your boyfriend back, and my boyfriend wants you, not me. Not only do they both now hate me, but you moved out without even telling me. Like an ending for our friendship? I know I didn't handle things that well, and I'm sorry for that. But I was hurting, Jace. And you've been the worst. So stop being so selfish and fix it up." Everyone was gawping at us, and Jace started blushing. Then she hissed at me, "Let's talk about it later. Not here." This only made me angrier, as I knew she had absolutely no intention of actually talking to me. Raging, I yanked back her ponytail. She yelped out, "What are you doing? Get off!" Then who should appear but Zach? Ugh! He pulled me off her, then hugged her. Then he shouted at me,
When will you grow up and think about your words and behavior?
I was shocked. Now he was on her side. Jeez. This guy had ditched me for my best friend. What was he expecting from me? Sunshine and unicorns? Suddenly, Jay appeared and saw Zach hugging Jace. Shocked, he said,
What's going on here? Jace, is this real? You and him? So what Aaron said was true all along?
Jace moved away from Zach and said, "Jay, I'm sorry. It wasn't meant to be like this." He gave a nod of his head, then replied,
I trusted you, but it seems like it's not worth it.
After that, he left. Jace looked really confused and embarrassed, which, I'm not gonna lie, made me feel a little bit satisfied. Also, Zach was not a fool and got angry about how she'd moved away from him. I left them to their heated discussion and went into class. Good. Now her love life was a mess, and it was my turn to fix mine. I had to bring Zach back to me on my own. No one could help me now. So one day, at his basketball match with another school's team, I asked the cheerleader team to let me in the Rooster mascot suit. It was so stuffy in there, but it'd be worth it, right? I would surprise him by running to hug him and celebrate when the team wins. He would definitely be touched and see that I'm always by his side cheering and watching him. So as planned, I ran down to embrace Zach as he scored the winning shot for the team. I tried to kiss him, but I forgot that I was in the form of a rooster. This made all the audience laugh. Zach tried to run away, but I chased after him and I stumbled. The rooster head fell off and everyone saw me. This time, the laughter and screams were even louder, but I just saw Zach looking at me with embarrassed and disappointed eyes. Talk about humiliating. Worse still, he didn't even help me up, just shook his head, then walked off. At that moment, I just wanted to melt into the ground. But then Jay rushed over and helped me to my feet. Jay drove me home, and he said,
Why did you have to embarrass yourself like that? And for a person who doesn't deserve you?
I replied, "He's my boyfriend."
He isn't anymore. I know it hurts like crazy, Aaron. But sometimes we need to let go of things that no longer belong to us. Don't lose your self-worth for unworthy things.
I looked up at him with teary eyes. So, you don't want Jace back?
Nah, She's made it pretty clear that she wants him, not me. And I'm not going to be second best to anyone. Besides, she lied to me, and I'm not about that.
I guess you're right, I sighed. It just hurts so much.
Erin, you're a strong girl. You'll get through this. But please promise me one thing, though. No more crazy ideas to try and win him back.
I know. I managed a laugh. When I got home, I thought about what Jay said. I guess he had a point. No matter how hard I tried to pull Zach back, he still turned away from me. And the same with Jace. I tried to fix things with her, and only ended up making everything worse. Thinking about it, Zach wasn't right for me. He wanted me to change who I was just to fit in with his life better. That wasn't right. I wanted a boyfriend who was proud of being seen with me, not embarrassed. And for Jace, she'd lied to me, and then she hadn't even respected me enough to talk to me before moving out. She wasn't a true friend. I knew that now. As the weeks passed, I finally got over everything. About Jace and Zach, I still see them around campus, but we don't talk. I heard they are a couple now, but the boys in the basketball club don't like her very much because she never lets Zach go out after matches with them. She also never dances and cheers happily for their victory. Well, that's not my problem now anyway. Ha! As for Jay and I, we're getting closer. I guess we bonded over our broken hearts. Also, it turns out we're far more similar than we realized. We started to hang out more, and then yesterday I suggested that we should go to the amusement park. His face was serious for a second, but then we both burst into laughter. I apologized to him for being ridiculous before, and he said, "Never mind. I love your positive vibes." I smiled happily and said, "Don't worry. This time I won't distract you while you're trying to win me a teddy." Then we both laughed. We're not officially a couple yet, but I can feel something between us. But there's no rush. I'm living in the moment, and it's pretty darn great. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have an amusement park to get to. Hi, my name is Mia, and I lived the first 14 years of my life trapped in a lie. I never left the house, and by that, I mean never. I grew up believing that I was allergic to the sun, and if I stayed out in it too long, I'd turn to dust. Dumb, I know, but I was just a kid, and I had no reason not to believe what my mom told me. On the rare occasions, I went out into the backyard, and my skin turned all blotchy and puffy. Looking back on it now, it's clear Mom had given me something to bring my skin out in a rash, but at the time, I honestly believed the sun was out to get me. I remember peering behind the curtain and watching the kids play out in the street. They looked like they were having so much fun, and I felt so sad that I couldn't join them. Mom charged into my room, quickly closed the curtain, and then she grabbed my shoulders and shouted at me, "Mia, never do that again. The sun can come in through the curtains and turn you to a crisp. Is that what you want?" I remember sobbing as I shook my head. I never did peer out at the other kids again after that. I could still hear them playing, so I would close my eyes and imagine that I was out there with them, playing chase and learning how to ride a bike. I so wanted that to be my reality. The problem was I didn't have that life. Instead, I was stuck inside with no friends. I'd never even touched the grass before. Mom homeschooled me. She took this really seriously and got really mad when I didn't understand something. One time, I gave the wrong answer to a math equation, so she screamed at me, "You're such an idiot! I've had enough of you!" Then she locked me in my room without dinner. Crazy, huh? But back then, I was so scared that from then, I didn't dare to ask her anything. It's always just Mom and me, and no one else in my house. She said my dad had died when I was a baby. Again, I had no reason not to believe her. I never had a phone to talk to anyone, and who did I have to talk to? Still, I remember being fascinated by this strange object she often pressed to her ear. Whenever she was on the phone, I believed she was talking to herself. Mom would lock me in the house while she went out. Then when she returned, she'd just throw me something to eat. a sandwich, a packet of potato chips, and sometimes she changed the meal to bread. She never really cooked. I'm not even sure if she knew how to. My house was a simple old house. There's not many things in it. No TV, no sofa, a basic kitchen. I mean, it looks like an abandoned house, but I thought it was normal because I'd not seen any other houses. My room was small, cold, and dark. I only had a hard mattress and some itchy old pillows. I didn't even have a bed cover. I used to shiver myself to sleep each night and dream of being out there playing with the other kids. Then, things got worse when I turned 10. Mom stormed into my room, gave me some food and a pile of books, and told me that I had to stay in my room from now on, so she knew I was safe. I put up with 4 years of this. It was horrible. She chucked my meals at me and gave me new books once a week. I felt so hungry and lonely all the time. Then one day, when evening arrived and she still hadn't fed me, my hunger pains got the better of me. So I tried the door, and to my surprise, it wasn't locked. So I snuck downstairs. That's when I saw Mom pacing the room, her phone in hand. She said, "Yes, I know, Toby. Well, she's finally of age, so when are you coming to get her?" Then she said, "Tomorrow at 10 a.m. I will be counting the money." I didn't know what was going on, but I knew something wasn't right. Then I heard Mum say, "Well, I suppose I better go and feed her then." I quickly darted upstairs and lay on my mattress. Mum appeared and passed me a sandwich and some water. She sat down next to me, which was odd, as she hardly ever did this. And she smiled at me as she said, "We need to get you cleaned up, and I've bought you a new dress to wear." "Why, Mum?" I asked her. Her smile faded into a scowl, and she kicked my mattress. "Why do you always have to be so insolent?" I didn't want to upset her further, so I didn't ask her anything else. Then the next day, Mom made me put the new dress on and let me out of my room. Then there was a knock at the door, and Mom brought this strange man in. I'd never interacted with anyone other than Mom before, so I just sat there, feeling afraid. He was around my mom's age and tall, really tall, and he had unkind eyes. He passed my mom an envelope, and she opened it and took out a lot of bits of paper. I know now that this was money, but back then, I didn't fully understand what it was. Mom counted it out, then nodded at him and said, "She's all yours."
Right. You're coming with me, sweetie.
He walked towards me. What? I stared at him open-mouthed.
"Mia, you're going to live with this man now."
Mom said it like it was no big deal.
"That's what happens when you turn 14. You have to leave."
"But Mom, why? I don't know him. I won't go." Then she slapped me and shouted out loud,
"Go with him. I'm done with you."
That's when I realized that I couldn't live with this woman anymore. I ran out of the front door. Surely turning to dust was better than living with any of them. Only, as the sun touched my skin, it didn't burn. That's when I knew Mom had been lying to me all this time. So I started running without knowing where I was going. I could hear Mom and that Toby guy chasing and shouting after me, but I just kept on running. Every little sound freaked me out, as I didn't understand this world and the people in it. The next thing I remember is some woman shaking me and saying, "Sweetie, are you okay?" I was so afraid at first and curled up into a ball, but then she told me she wasn't going to hurt me, she just wanted to help me. She had kind eyes, not like Mom or that man. So I told her what had happened. She looked completely shocked, but she rang the police. So it turns out that when I was a baby, I was stolen. My mom isn't really my mom at all. She was some messed up woman who took me out of my pushchair and made some awful deal with that Toby man that he could buy me off her when I was 14. She didn't know my real parents. She just saw a chance to grab me, and she took it. It's horrible to think that she robbed me of a normal life, but I try not to dwell on this thought too much. I can't change the past. Then eventually, something amazing happened. My real parents were found. It was so emotional seeing them for the first time. They hugged me and we all just cried. They told me how they'd never stopped looking for me. And guess what? I found out I have a little sister called Izzy. I love hanging out with her and watching her play. She's the best. It's been hard. There's so much I've had to learn, such as how to interact with people, and even how to eat with a knife and fork. My real parents have been so kind and patient with me. Now, at the age of 19, I have some sort of normal life. I still find many things confusing, and I struggle being around large crowds. I had to get used to sleeping on a bed, and I find computers the most confusing thing ever. But I managed to function in the big, wide world. As for my fake mom and Toby, well, they were both sentenced for their involvement in my kidnap and are now in jail for a very long time. I have a chance at leading a normal life in the normal world, and even though what happened to me was horrible, I'm not going to let those cruel people ruin my life. I finally have a loving family, and I know that with their care and support, I can get through anything.
Hi, my name's Kat, which is short for Catherine, but only my mom calls me that. My dad's Indian, and my mom's American. They met back when he was working over here. Then they fell in love, got married, and had me. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and they split up before I was born. In India, when you marry, it's meant to be for life. But still, my parents got divorced, so the reason for that must have been really serious. So serious that till this day, I still don't know. Every time I asked about it, my parents would just ignore me and change the subject. Anyway, I've always lived with my mom, but my dad lives close by. Most kids from broken homes hate not having both parents around all the time, but this never bothered me. Don't get me wrong, I love my dad and all, but I guess I couldn't miss what I didn't know. Besides, I had far bigger problems to deal with. Okay, so don't laugh, hear me out. I'm a tomboy, a fact which my mom hates. Yep, I detest wearing skirts and dresses, or anything girly and sparkly. Yuck! Give me basketball shorts and a baggy t-shirt any day. Also, I don't understand why some girls spend ages doing their makeup. Why would I want to make myself look like some living doll just to impress people? Please. I didn't get on that well with other girls. I guess I just had nothing in common with them. I didn't care about shopping and watching rom-coms. Nope. I'd much rather be kicking a ball around or playing video games. My best friend's a boy called Harry, and I've known him for forever. He's the one who taught me how to ride a skateboard. Talk about an adrenaline buzz. Now I pretty much go everywhere on one. I'm like a real-life Bart Simpson. For my whole life, my mom's given me disapproving looks. From the time when I only invited boys to my 6th birthday party, tore the arms off the dolls she gave me, and point-blank refused to move when she booked me in for ballet classes. I just wasn't a tea time with dolls and teddy bears kind of girl, and I didn't understand why she couldn't just buy me trucks and action figures instead. Then on top of that, Mom only dressed me up in skirts and dresses. I had no option but to wear them and endure school feeling so uncomfortable. I mean, have you tried playing soccer in a frilly dress? Talk about ridiculous. The other boys always had to wait for me to straighten out my skirt or try and find the hairpins that kept tumbling out of my hair. I mean, seriously, those things were so lame. By the time I reached 12, I was done wearing girly clothes just to please my mom. So I wore comfy, passed-down clothes that I got from my cousins beneath the hideous dresses and took them off en route to school. I was also so sick of my long, boring hair, so one day I snuck into the barber's after school and got an undercut. Then one evening, I was chilling on the couch when Mom pointed at my hair and in a horrified voice said, "Catherine, what have you done to yourself?" I hadn't realized the way I was lying meant some of my undercut was on show. I just shrugged and replied, "It's my hair, so I can do what I want with it." "Why would you want to make yourself look ugly?" she shouted. "It's not ugly. It's cool." My mom looked so shocked. She grounded me for a month, and during that time, she barely spoke to me. The quarreling didn't end there. Over the next few years, it seemed like every little thing I did annoyed her. From chewing on gum to refusing to wear a dress to my cousin's wedding, you name it, it made her mad. On loads of occasions, she shouted at me that she wished I was normal. I didn't get it. My friends and teachers didn't treat me like I was an alien. So why did my mom? One time, when I was about to leave and go and skateboard with Harry, she actually accused me of being a lesbian. I just rolled my eyes at this. For the record, I'm not. I've had crushes on boys before. Anyway, my dad was a lot more chilled than Mom. He's totally okay with me being a tomboy. One time, he even sent me a gift box with this really cool sports jersey and shorts in it. I stuck it in my wardrobe to hide it from Mom, but she still managed to find it and threw it all in the trash. As I questioned her why she did that, she replied, "If you want to live like a boy that much, you should move in with your dad." This made me so mad, so I packed a bag and went to Dad's place. He was bugged out by what my mom had done, but still, he told me I should forgive her and that I couldn't live here for good with him, as he couldn't be home all the time and take care of me like Mom did. Yeah, right. More like he knew Mom would never let this happen. It's like she hated me, but she still wanted me around so she had someone to moan at. I stayed with Dad for a few days until he had to go on a business trip. Then I had to reluctantly go home, though I was still kind of sulky at my mom. Then came the bombshell as I just arrived home. Mom sat me down and told me that she was dating some new guy called Max. Wow. I knew Mom and I weren't close, but I had no idea she'd been dating some new dude. "We're planning the wedding, and of course I want you to be my bridesmaid, but you'll have to wear a dress." What? She'd known the guy for 5 minutes, and now she was marrying him? Yeah, whatever, I replied. My mom looked surprised. "That's all? You seriously have no problem with this?" I got up and walked upstairs to my room while saying, "Yeah, Mom, I'm okay with it. I support you doing what you like, not like you who always scolds me for my preferences." I could sense my mom being flustered without looking back. Ha! I'd won this round. So, Max moved in with his teenage daughter, Taylor, who's a year younger than me and goes to the same school. Talk about a Barbie. All she seems to be is a mass of shiny blonde hair and pink everything. Like, seriously, her rucksack, bed covers, curtains, even her phone's pink. But it's fine. Everyone has their own taste, so, whatever. Actually, it turns out that this new addition to the family wasn't as bad as I thought. Max is an okay guy who never looks down on me or comments on my tomboy ways. And about my mom, her focus towards me decreased. I was basically invisible to her. Now she had Taylor around. You think I'd be mad jealous, huh? Actually, no. Not at all. I was glad of the peace. But then Mom started comparing me to that brat, saying how I should be more like her as we were both girls, but I acted like a little demon. What? Taylor was so pathetic. She screamed when she saw a roach in the kitchen and refused to get down from the worktop until it had been removed. Don't even get me started on how she acted like she couldn't reach the top shelves in the school's library, so other boys had to help her. Ugh, sickening. Then things got heated when Taylor stormed into my room and asked me to come down for dinner. Well, I probably was playing my music too loudly to hear her knocking on my door, but still, she wasn't welcome here. Then she took a quick look around my room. Okay, I'm not exactly the most organized person, but I know exactly where things are. I asked her, "What are you gawping at?" "Nothing," she bluffed. "Hey, why don't we go to the mall tomorrow? Let's go buy something cute. I need new clothes, and looks like you could use some help too." "I'm good, thanks. Crop tops aren't really my style. I'm not that much of a tryhard." I smirked at her. "Oh, please. You wish you were like me. Look at yourself. You have the sense of fashion of a 5-year-old boy. That's so childish. Who wears cargo pants anymore? Beats being a flamboyant ugly duckling who hides behind a zillion layers of pink glitter and foundation. Well, at least this ugly duckling will soon become a swan. But you're stuck being a nobody forever. No wonder Mom hates you." I stared at her with hatred. Who was she to judge me in my own house? I needed to teach this brat a lesson. I charged towards her and yanked back her hair. She yelled at me to stop. Then at that moment, my mother appeared and shouted at me, "Catherine, Stop this at once! You need to grow up. Me? I shouted back. She just told me you don't love me. Well, she has a point. No one could love someone who acts like this. Look in the mirror. Taylor only said what we're all thinking. You're 17 already, for God's sakes. Grow up a little and give me a break. What was Mom saying? She was taking the side of some random girl that only just moved in over her actual daughter? Great. There's zero use fighting with these close-minded morons. I let go of Taylor and pushed her and my mom out of my room, screaming at them, "Fine! You two go and live happily ever after in your pink, fake, girly world." Then I slammed the door in their dumb faces. I was so done with them. I was so done with everything. Hey, Kat here. I don't want to alarm you or anything, but this is the final part of my story. I hope you'll enjoy it. And here's a reminder of what's happened in the last part. You remember, my dad told me surprising news that he wanted to get back with Mom, and he needed my help, don't you? Of course, I jumped at the chance and immediately put my healing family relationships plan into action. I knew I had to somehow delay Mom's wedding to Max, so I pretended to break my leg. My plan was totally working, as not only did they postpone the wedding, but Max and Taylor moved out to give me time to heal. I was very satisfied because everything was going as I planned, when suddenly, right on the day I had the bandage removed, I arrived home to hear the awful truth that shocked me to my core. My dad didn't want me to exist in the world because I was a girl. As soul-destroying as it was, I continued to listen to Mom and Dad's conversation. I heard Mom say, "I will never forgive you and never forget the moment you wanted me to get an abortion. Never! So don't think I will ever let you come back to this family." Dad replied, "Mary, please, I beg you." I'd heard enough, so I ran into my room. It all made sense now. No wonder Dad supported my tomboy style, because he desperately wanted a boy. As for my mom, she tried to make me dress up like a girl to get revenge on him. Feeling unwanted and unloved, I packed some clothes and quietly left the house. Normally, when I was upset, I would run to my dad's, but that option was out, obviously, so where could I go? Then I thought about Harry, so I called him to pick me up, and I just told him that I felt really bad right now and wanted to run away from home. Without knowing what the exact problem was, he showed up and drove us to the beach. He bought us loads of snacks, and we sat there in silence and watched the sun go down. Then Harry turned to me and said, "Are you ready to talk about it now?" I sighed, ate a handful of Cheetos, then told him everything. I still can't believe it. My dad, the person I love the most, didn't want me at all. Then my mom just used me to make him suffer. Talk about exhausting. It's best if I disappear from their lives. It's not like I'm wanted here anyway. Harry listened. He looked shocked, but he didn't interrupt me. Then he patted me on the back and pulled me in for a big hug. It was weird because we never usually showed each other that kind of affection, but it didn't feel strange at all. Instead, I felt safe next to him. At this vulnerable moment, he's the only person I still trusted. After a long silence, Harry turned to me and said, Who said you aren't wanted? I'm happy that you were born. I mean, meeting you is the best thing that ever happened to me. I've never met someone like you before. Kat, you're a brave and an amazing girl." My heart skipped a beat, and I felt my face turn bright red. I never knew that Harry thought of me like that. Then he touched my hand and said, "And there's something you should know. Oh my God. I didn't know why my heart was beating so fast. What's he gonna say? But then his phone rang. It was my mom. She'd been looking for me for hours and was worried sick. When Harry told her I was with him and I was fine, she sounded so relieved. I'm not a blubber. I cried and couldn't stop. I let Harry tell her where we were. When Mom arrived, she rushed over and hugged me. "Why didn't you tell me you were at the beach? I was so worried. Honey, don't you ever do that to me again." I hugged her and cried so loud, I didn't really know why I cried. Maybe because it was the first time we've ever properly hugged, and I could feel her love towards me. After we finally stopped crying, and trust me, it took a while, I told her that I knew the reason why she'd divorced Dad. She wiped off tears on my face and said, "Oh, sweetie, I kind of guessed you must have heard us fighting earlier. I'm so sorry about that. And now you know the reason why I was always so strict on you and wanted you to dress like a girl, to show your dad how amazing it is to have a daughter. But instead, you dress and behave like a boy, just like your father wanted. But Mom, you have to understand that I dress and behave like this because it's who I am. It's not because of Dad, not because of Harry, not because of anyone. If I change, it would mean that I don't live as my true self anymore. So, can you please let me be me, Mom?" My mom smiled at me and replied, "Oh, of course, sweetie. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. It was so selfish of me. I was so focused on going against your father that I forgot about your feelings. Can you ever forgive me?" "Of course, Mom." And then we cried again. Since then, things with my mom have improved a lot, but there was still some unfinished business I had to handle. Firstly, I had to swallow my pride and apologize to Max and Taylor. Harry came with me for moral support. We all sat down, and I apologized for being a childish brat. "You're a good man, Max, and my mom truly loves you. I would be grateful if you and Taylor would be a part of this family. Can you two please come back?" I said. He looked shocked for a moment, but then he smiled at me and said, "With pleasure. I miss your mom so much, it's driving me crazy." "Yep, he's been so miserable without her," Taylor added. "I'm sorry to you too, Taylor. Do you need some help with packing?" I asked her. Taylor smiled at me and replied, "Sure, that'd be great." So, Mom and Max had a small ceremony in the end, although I still ended up wearing a dress, but hey, it was an exception for Mom's special day. It was a beautiful ceremony, and Mom looked amazing. Next, I had to make Taylor and Garrett get back together. I went to see Garrett at school and told him that it was all my fault Taylor broke up with him. He looked quite shocked, but at the same time, he was also happy to hear me say that. Well, that was such a relief. I felt much better now, knowing that I cleared up all misunderstandings between them. Then, when I was having lunch with Taylor in the cafeteria, he walked over with this enormous bouquet of roses, passed them to her, and asked her to be his girlfriend again. Taylor looked so surprised, but then she gave me a worried look. I smiled and said, "It's okay. You two are meant for each other." She was so happy she hugged me. I guess it was good to see her happy. And last but not least, I had to finish off the beach conversation with Harry. Obviously, I couldn't let that slide that easily. I've been thinking about it a lot, wondering what could it possibly be. Geez, why does it feel like my whole body is heating up every time I think back to that moment? I asked him to come to the beach, where I prepared a blanket on the sand with 2 cans of Coke and a huge pizza. His face lit up when he saw the setup. We had an awesome time and didn't stop laughing, even when Harry teased me by reminding me how I'd worn a dress to impress Garrett. I looked Harry in the eyes and said, "Thanks. Thanks for always having my back when I needed. And, meeting you is also the greatest thing that ever happened to me. You're the only one who accepts me for who I am." He touched my hand and said, "Kat, last time, I wanted to tell you something. I really like you, and I want us to be more than friends. Will you be my girlfriend?" Oh my God, this was crazy. Suddenly, I felt so shy, so I gently punched his arm and turned away, looking elsewhere so he couldn't see I was blushing like a tomato. Then I said, "Okay, fine, but it's just because I pity you." He laughed and hugged me. It felt so good being in his arms. Life was pretty great. Finally, but there was just one last issue to resolve. My dad. I went round to his place and we had a super long talk. He admitted he messed up,
and apologized for what he'd done in the past and for trying to get me to split Mom and Max up. He told me that it didn't matter if I was a boy or not, he will always love me and is very proud of me. So, as you can see, it's been a whirlwind, but it all worked out in the end. I have the best boyfriend ever and an amazing family. I've been through a lot, but all I'm gonna say is never change who you are just to fit into the norm or to please anyone. Be yourself, and the right people will love the real you. If they can't accept you for who you are, then they're just not worth it.